don't miss any future videos and updates. Now, as fans of the show will know, I have a fairly strong affinity to the city of Liverpool, which is largely helped by the strong Celtic and particularly Irish influence. And this week I'm joined by Liverpool historian and a friend of mine, Frank Carlyle, who's going to speak about the influence of the Irish on Liverpool and how it all began. So Frank, thanks very much for coming on the show this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's a great pleasure, Padre. Great pleasure.
And you also had me on your own show there a couple of months ago, which was great as well. So yeah. It's nice to be on the...
So at least we know each other.
We've had prior experience. So it's great to be on the other side of the mic this time. So
exactly.
Very happy, Frank, today with the Italians win last night. So just to begin, Frank is actually Italian Liverpool descent, but has a very strong interest in the Liverpool-Irish connection.
That's right, with my mother. My mother is, was unfortunately, she's passed on. And her name is a very strong Italian name, Angelina Maria Yolanda Volanti. That was her name. Very strong Italian links, actually. And I've always supported Padre Biasori, the Blues of Italy. And last night, as you mentioned, it was very, very, well, it was just made up, as we say here in Liverpool. Absolutely delighted.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Just as well that Lukaku can't score an open goal from 3 or 4 yards, which is a nice help to you. But in tribute to you and to the Azzurri, I'm wearing my Sergio Tacchini top on there today in the Liverpool colours, red and white. So I'll be cheering for you in the rest of the Euros.
I just hope that they go on to win it, because I think they're the best team in it so far. I think they are, and that's no disrespect to England, whom friends of mine support, but unfortunately, lots of them don't. As they say, Scouts, not English.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how is the football coming home thing going down at the moment?
I don't understand that. I'm being honest. I just don't understand it's coming home. I don't know what's coming home, to be honest. Whether it's another variant of COVID that's coming home, I just don't know. I haven't a clue. It's not like not that they've ever won the Euros.
That's a true point. Yeah.
Won the Euros. Someone said to me, "It's football." I said, "What football?" I said, the only thing that's coming home is Liverpool Football Club. You can chant that, that'll be okay, because it won't be coming home with Liverpool Football Club. But then again,
Well, if England do win the Euros, they're only 5 European Cups behind Liverpool, so we can always say that.
Yes, absolutely. You're so right. You're so right.
So just before we get stuck into the chat, we'll just do our usual cheers. So we bought a very Liverpool themed mug. So they have my personalised Liverpool mug.
Yeah.
We have one that's half Liverpool with the Titanic.
Yeah, mine is the Titanic. Yeah, a friend of mine gave it to me.
Cheers and good health, Frank. Bye.
Salute, as they say in Italy.
So we're just going to go back and I suppose to the start, and there has been a great link between Liverpool and Ireland historically. It's been known as the 33rd county, the second capital of Ireland. We're just going to go back to the very start of where the links began between the two places.
Well, the two links, very strong links, goes back to 1566, and a chap by the name of Sir Humphrey Gilbert, who was the half brother of Sir Walter Raleigh. And Sir Walter Raleigh, as you know, was a Queen's favourite, in a court, Queen Elizabeth I. And with the Spanish getting over to America and conquering the Atlantic, especially Columbus, Sir Humphrey Gilbert said to Elizabeth, listen, we need to send over the English because the Spanish are there. And it's what he actually said was that they're spreading their gospel, the devil's gospel, which was Catholicism. Because don't forget, there was a big Reformation, you know. This country, England, divorced itself from Rome. So they called it Catholicism the devil's religion. And he wanted to go over there to get to the indigenous Americans, because they never had a clue what was going on, you see. But they just wanted to get to North America. So they looked around and they've never crossed before. They've never crossed the Atlantic to Sir Humphrey Gilbert. So what he said was, we'll look around, we'll go to a country and we'll see how the indigenous native reacts. So we decided to go to Ireland and use it as a stepping stone for his own good and for the English good. So he goes over in 1566 in order to cause famine, which is a big thing. And the scribe, he actually sailed from Liverpool, came up to Liverpool and sailed over there. And I'd like to read the comments of the night. Quote, not a comment, it's a quote. And it comes from the scribe, Liverpool scribe, Thomas Churchyard. And here's what he actually says. Excuse me. And he says, Thomas Churchyard said, he brought great terror to the people when they saw the heads of their dead fathers, brothers, children, kinsfolk, and friends lie on the ground before their faces. Because what he did, Gilbert, when he went over to lay waste the land, what I mean is they scorched the land so that the people couldn't eat, couldn't grow anything, scorched the land. And he just laid waste in order, as I said, to cause famine, and he cut off the heads of his dead enemies. And he actually quoted in a letter to a poet, Philip Sidney, who was a great friend of his. And he says, I slew all of those from time to time that did belong to, feed, accompany, or maintain any outlaws or traitors, and after my first summoning of any castle or fort, if they would not presently yield it, I would not afterwards take it of their gift, but won it perforce, how many lives soever it cost, putting man, woman, and child of them to the sword. And he left that, you know, as I said about what Thomas Churchyard had actually said, he left a line of heads on both sides, a line of heads leading up to his tent, and he made the Irish nobles go up, knock on the door of his tent, and yield their land and give the land to him,
Christ, yeah.
to the English. And this is what the English had done in 1566. And as I said, that was the first famine. But other famines followed. One in 1727, another one 2 years later, 1729, another one in 1740, another one in 1800. In 1800, another one. And then you had the final one, which was in 1845. And people think that 1845 was the only famine in Ireland. And don't forget, hundreds of thousands of people, Irish people, died in every famine from 1566 onwards. And those particular dates that I've mentioned, 1727. 1729, 1740, 1800 and 1845. So you can imagine the decimation of the population of Ireland. It was horrendous. It really was horrendous what was happening to the Irish at that time. And the 1845 one, George Bernard Shaw said, how could there be a famine when the country was full of food? And George Bernard Shaw was so right, because there was a place in Stroke Sound where the famine had actually started. Not the famine, I'm sorry, the potato blight. And that belonged to a Major John Ross Mahon, that particular land. Because going back to Cromwell times, when he crossed over the Irish Sea to Ireland, he just wanted to get rid of the Irish. Cromwell, he just wanted to get rid of them. And there were too many of them. There was too many rebellions, as he thought. So he said, oh, we can't, do away with them all. And he came back to England and he said to Major John Ross Mahon's ancestor, I'll give you, he said, because you killed more Irish than anybody else, I'll give you the lands in Strokes Town, which was 10,000 acres of prime land. So we had that. And the Catholics who owned the land were then, they went into serfdom, you might as well say, to work the land for the Mahon family from Cromwell times right up to 1845, because he wanted to get rid of the Catholics, unfortunately, Mahon. He just wanted them off his land to replace them with Protestant labour.
The famine in 1845 is known in Ireland as Ungorta Moor, the Great Famine.
Yeah.
Just one thing about Queen Victoria, I just want to mention at that time, the Sultan of Turkey wanted to send £10,000 to the Famine Relief Fund.
Yeah.
And he was advised against that by the British diplomats and ministers, as Queen Victoria was only willing to send £2,000, and it would be disrespectful to send more than Queen Victoria. So he ended up sending £1,000. He sent 3 or 4 ships full of grain and other food stuff after the fact. But
it was too little too late, wasn't it, really? Because Robert Peel, who was then the Prime Minister, he said, this enough's enough. It goes back to Pitt, actually. Goes back to Pitt, William Pitt the Younger, because in 1801, he said, I've had enough of this. I've had enough. He said, this is wrong. You're starving the people over there in Ireland. And these were all the English landowners at the time. And they were living a happy life, not in Ireland, but and using all the profits, but living in London. And he said, right, he said, I've had enough of this. And he said, right, I'm bringing Ireland into the Union. And that's where we have England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Now, the link between Liverpool and Ireland as a result of the famine. So there was always good migration links between Liverpool and Ireland. Like at the turn of that century, 49,000 Irish migrants already lived in Liverpool by the time the Great Famine started. But when the famine kicked off, or the genocide, one might say, 1.5 million Irish people crossed the Irish Sea in coffin ships headed for Liverpool. By the time they arrived in Liverpool, apparently a third or so had succumbed to disease and hunger. Some thought they were going to New York and were just let off in Lime Street or wherever, and said, they thought they were in New York, they were tricked into thinking. But a lot of people stayed and built various generations of Liverpool Irish.
That's right. You mentioned diseases, because they had what you call louse-born diseases, louse-born, and that was through starvation. They were starving. it was horrendous, you know, for these poor people. They just wanted to get away from the English, as you would if you were an Irish person. Anyway, when they sailed, they really sailing from Ireland, they really thought that they landed in America, New York, for example, because it took days, you know, sailing across, not like today, you know, where you can get over there in a few hours. And it took days, and don't forget that these people were also, I hate to say this word, I don't like saying it any time, they were illiterate, and also they were ill, they were sick, they were diseased. So they really thought when they stepped off the boat that they were in America, free from the English. Anyway, lots of them went on. 80,000 of them came into Liverpool. Lots of them went, thousands of them went over to America to make a life. And this was in 1847 after the Great Famine. I don't call it a famine. I'm with George Bernard Shaw there, because they were still exporting potatoes. And lots of people think, oh no, these haven't, you know, there was a potato blight. Not everywhere. It was in Stroke Sound, and it wasn't airborne either. It had to be planted in the ground. Because in 1644, in the home counties here, you know, Surrey, Sussex, Middlesex, and places like that, Essex, there was a potato blight. And also in Northern Europe, the likes of Normandy, the likes of Holland and Belgium, there was a potato blight there as well in 1644, because in 1643, in 1843, I'm sorry, there was a massive potatoes coming over from America, because they exported millions of tons of potatoes to Europe, but that's where they were founded, over there. And he was bringing them over here, and we had them here, and they, as I said, a year later, they were diseased potatoes. It was a diseased batch, and yet it wasn't airborne. So what had happened? It had to be someone to bring it out, to bring them over from England to Ireland to be dug in Stroke Sound, Major John Ross land, and that's how the potato blight started. It was horrendous. And then there was the great movement, what you call the great movement of the Irish. And they said, we've had enough of this. And the English said, well, how are we going to counteract this? And what they did, they decided to build, which they already had here, since, well, in Liverpool, I know that there was one in 1732, and that was a workhouse. So therefore they said, okay, we'll get them and put them in the workhouses. Charles Dickens described a workhouse. He said, I'd rather spend a lifetime in Newgate prison than a week in a workhouse. That's what he actually said. They were horrendous places, because the only time that you ever came out of there was feet first, if you get me meaning, feet first. And so, you know, workhouses sprung up all over Ireland. People were escaping. But by the time they got to Liverpool in 1847, 60,000, it's a lot of people, 60,000 of them actually stayed here in Liverpool. And they made, obviously, you're going to look for a place where you feel safe, and where the Catholic Church was, or a few Catholic churches as it happened. And that was around the Scotland Road area. And the most important church to them at the time was St Anthony's, which is in Scotland Road, still there today. And that's where they made their homes. And it was fantastic the way they were, because what the Irish did, the Irish gave their all in work. They were very strong people, very, very strong people, great workers, and they were known as the navigators for the canals and also the railway. You couldn't beat the Irish navvy, as they got called. It's not a derogatory term. It's just shortened from navigators because they could go straight. They could turn another way and go straight again. Hence, the navvies, the navigators. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant workers.
Another connection there, I just reminded me when you're saying about George Bernard Shaw and how could it be a famine when the country's full of food.
Yeah.
And the song, which has been adopted by fans of Liverpool FC in a different version, The Fields of Athenry.
Oh.
Now Fields of Anfield Road.
I'll be choked. I'm choked when you say absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. The Fields of Athenry, the Fields of Anfield Road. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, there's a couple of lines in that, like, for he stole Trevelyan's corn so the young might see the morn. So yeah. Charles Trevelyan was, I think he was secretary for state or something like that at the time, and yeah, it was the main character of the song was a guy who stole some of the corn to feed his family and got caught and was put on a prison ship to Tanzania or Australia or whatever, whatever they call it. So.
Australia.
Yeah.
He was actually being shot by the British if they were down by the docks. You know, I'm talking about during the famine and just post-famine. You know, they were down the docks to steal anything could source feed the families, and it was shocking. And they were actually being shot. Can I read a few quotes?
Yeah, walk away.
Please? Yeah. And I'll read a couple. One from the likes of people who you'd know or heard of, and also cuttings from Liverpool newspapers. Now, don't forget, this was a Protestant country. It was also, Liverpool was a Protestant city at the time. I'll just take a slip of my tea. I'll start off with Benjamin Disraeli. Benjamin Disraeli, no?
Prime Minister.
Yes, he certainly was. Now, the Irish were coming over, not in the droves, not like the influx of 1847, but they were coming over to work, especially building the canals and also the railway, you know, because the railway came about after the trials in 1830 and started here in Liverpool, as you know. They came over and started to build stations in 1836. That's when the first passenger railway system in the world began, from Liverpool to Manchester. Not the other way around, Manchester to Liverpool. It was Liverpool to Manchester. And Benjamin Disraeli said this about the Irish in 1836. This is while these lads were here. And he said, the Irish ate our free isle. They ate our order, our civilization, our enterprising industry, our sustained courage, our decorous liberty, our pure religion. This wild and reckless, indolent, uncertain and superstitious race have no sympathy with the English character. Their fair ideal of human felicity is an alternation of clannish broils and coarse idolatry. Their history describes an unbroken circle of bigotry and blood. That's what Benjamin Disraeli said about the Irish.
It's highly ironic. It's highly ironic he's calling Irish people bigots. Like,
oh, you wouldn't think so. And this is the irony of it all. Now, there was a fellow which, even today, Even today, undergraduates study this fellow in the course of sociology. And this fellow was a champion for the underprivileged. Here's what he said about the Irish. And his name is Frederick Engels. You know, Engels and Marxism, you always, if you're studying these particular people, sociology, you study these particular people. You study them. So, and he said, the worst quarters of all the largest towns are inhabited by Irishmen. Whenever a district is distinguished for a special filth and a special ruinousness, the explorer may safely count upon meeting chiefly those Celtic faces which one recognizes at the first glance as different from the Saxon physiognomy of the native, and the singing aspirate brogue which the true Irishman never loses. The sudden facile character of the Irishman is crudity, which places him but little above the savage, is contempt for all humane enjoyments, in which his very crudeness makes him incapable of sharing his filth and poverty, all favour drunkenness. With such a competitor, the English working man has to struggle with a competitor upon the lowest plane possible in a civilized country, who, for this very reason, requires less wages than any other. And that was written in 1844.
Yes, that they were up against it from the start, weren't they?
Well, absolutely. And this comes from, I'll tell you after the end what this comes from. Listen to this carefully. A gulf certainly does appear to yawn between the gorilla and the Negro. The wilds of Africa do not exhibit an example of any intermediate animal, but a creature manifestly between the gorilla and the Negro is to be met with in some parts of London and Liverpool. Now listen to my diction here, just listen. It comes from Ireland, whence it has contrived to migrate. It belongs, in fact, to a tribe of Irish savages, the lowest species of the Irish Yahoo. When conversing with its kind, it talks a lot of gibberish. It is, moreover, a climbing animal and may sometimes be seen ascending a ladder laden with a hod of bricks. The somewhat superior ability of the Irish Yahoo to utter articulate sounds may suffice to provide it as a development and not, as some imagine, a degeneration of the gorilla. How about that? About a person or person, a race of people. How about that? It's horrible. And it was horrible then. And that was written in 1862. 1862. And it was by the magazine, which you all know today, Punch. Punch. Still being published today. And I'd like to read this one. This is at the very first. The Irish coming over. It was on the 6th of November, 1847, and it was in the Liverpool Mail newspaper. And this is what it says. Imagine reading this in the newspaper. Imagine. If you're, an educated Irishman. I'm sorry to say that, but we're talking mid-19th century, when, unfortunately, even people in this country couldn't read, the masses couldn't read or write. So it says that the scum of Ireland come to Liverpool and die in their thousands is true. But whose fault is that? Misgovernment in Ireland, idleness on part of the peasantry, and ignorance and extravagance on part of the gentry. The people that come here are not labourers, they are beggars and paupers. They were never labourers. They never did an honest day's work in their lives. They lived by begging, as the Roman Catholic prelate regrets to say they cannot do now, for the potato crop has failed. And when they arrive here, begging is their profession, the workhouse their retreat, the fourpenny loaf per day a certainty, and medical aid, port wine soup, a coffin, and a Christian burial. How was that said by the Liverpool Mail? And I've only got three quotes, three things. And this is the Liverpool Mercury, and this was, on the 1st of August 1848, a year after the 1847 influx. And the Liverpool Mercury today is known as the Liverpool Echo. And this is what this says. It is not to be forgotten too that much, very much of the Irish misery lies quite beyond the reach of any remedial measures of a government, except by a very indirect and gradual process that can change the idiosyncrasies and aptitudes of a nation and convert a slothful, improvident, and reckless race into an industrious, thrifty, and peaceful people. We may see what stuff the finest peasantry in the world are made of by visiting the Irish Quarter in any of the large towns of England or America. There is a taint of inferiority in the character of the pure Celt, which has to do with his present degradation than Saxon physiognomy. And this is how we were greeting the Irish. It's not like, oh, if you're Irish, there's a lot, that was in the 20th century. That was in the 20th century. Came about. And this is the Liverpool Herald on the 17th of November 1855. And it says, let a stranger to Liverpool be taken through the streets that branch off from the Vauxhall Road, Marylebone, Whitechapel, and the north end of the docks, and he will witness such a scene of filth and vice as we defy any person to parallel in any part of the world. The numberless whiskey shops crowded with drunken clad women, some with infants in their arms, from early dawn till midnight. Thousands of children in rags with their features scarcely distinguished in consequences of cakes of dirt upon them, the stench of filth in every direction, men and women fighting the most horrible execrations and obscenities with oaths and curses that make the heart shudder. All these things would lead the spectator to suppose he was in a land of savages where God was unknown and man was uncared for. And who are these wretches? Not English, but Irish papists. It is remarkable, and no less remarkable than true, that the lower order of Irish papists are the filthiest beings in the habitable globe. They abound in dirt and vermin and have no care for anything but self-gratification that would degrade the brute creation. Look at our police reports. 3/4 of the crime perpetrated in this large town is by Irish papists. They are the very dregs of society, steeped to the very lips in all manner of vice, from murder to pocket picking, and yet the citizens of Liverpool taxed to maintain the bands of ruffians and their families in time of national distress. And the brute creation he mentioned, mentioned there is the devil himself, which is absolute, you know, I'll read that sentence again. They abound in dirt and vermin and have no care for anything but self-gratification that would degrade the brute creation, the devil himself, degrade it. And this is how Liverpool saw the Irish. This is how they saw it. Because the majority of them, 98% of them who came in were Catholic. And as I said, this was a Protestant city. And unfortunately, it's like today. It's like today with the immigrants. You've got the far right, you know, who don't want any of these immigrants over. And it was, you know, you go back to 1847, and you just didn't want the Irish here. We loved taking what we could over from our island, whether it was the fisheries, whether it was anything. You know, tree felling, you know, the woods, wood, everything they were taken from Ireland, everything. And but if an Irish person came over here, he didn't like it. Shocking.
As you read out there, Frank, it was a very hostile environment that the Irish immigrants found themselves in.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so, because when they came here, as I said, what you've got to understand, and what people have to understand, Padre, no matter where you go, you're going to be apprehensive. And these people had just come over in 1847 to get away from the English when they realised that they were in England itself, and there was hostilities against them, which carried on right into the 20th century with sectarianism. You know, people think about Belfast, they think about Glasgow and other places, you know, like Manchester and places like that. That was having lots of sectarianism. So were we. So here in Liverpool, there was lots of sectarianism, especially on certain dates, the likes of the 12th of July and St. Patrick's Day, you know, when there was these wonderful processions. And it was strange times. I remember being a little schoolboy, and the headmaster coming every time, and he used to say, you know, whatever you do, don't go by the marching of the Orange Lodge.
Yeah.
Don't cause trouble. Don't throw stones. Don't do, you know. So we were getting told, well, that's inciting a little boy anyway, or little boys and girls even, to go and throw stones. Don't throw stones. I think there was a subliminal message, to be honest. You know, as a child, we did. But, you know, we grow out of it. Unfortunately, it didn't stop. There was a great march in 1850, and it was by these reformers, and I went right down towards the Scotland Road area where the Catholics lived, and it was shocking. It was really shocking. And they actually hanged from one of those gas lampposts a statue of the Virgin Mary, Our Lady. That was going back then. 1850, 1851 or something. It was one of those years.
So they actually they hung a statue of Our Lady from the lamppost, is it?
Yeah, You know those gas lamp posts, and they have the arms out, and they threw the rope over there and hoisted it up around the neck.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Mary plays an important role in the Protestant religion as well. So they're kind of, you know what I mean? They were poking fun at someone who is a very important role of their own religion. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like, you know?
Yeah.
The main issue is Immaculate Conception, but other than that, she exists in their religion, like, you know. So.
I was just going to say, it's very much like bonfire night on the 5th of November, because when they had a bonfire night and they throw the guy on, well, they used to throw the Pope on as well.
Okay, Jesus Christ.
Not from here, not around here, but they threw the guy on. And I give a lecture about the gunpowder plot, 1605 gunpowder plot. And I, you know, say to the majority, well, all of them, I used to say, you know, I'm talking about lectures over the years. And I used to say to them, who's Catholics in here? And the majority of the hands went up, you know. I said, okay. I said, what about bonfire nights? I said, can anyone tell me what bonfire means? And they just said, oh, yeah, making wood and lighting a fire. And the guy thought, I said, okay. I said, it means a good fire. And that good fire is the burning of Catholic doctrine and also the effigies of Catholics. In other words, it's the burning of Catholicism. And I said, that's what you celebrate.
It's November.
So he never has a clue, you know. I didn't have a clue that it was the burning of Catholicism, whether it was man, woman, child, and doctrine, and the Catholic faith in general.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that myself either, so that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's why he calls it the good fire, so the burning of Catholicism. It's like the poem, The Fairy Queen. And the Fairy Queen, you know, the dragon, you know, being enslaved by, what's his, I forget the poet's name, I forget his name. Anyway, it will come to me. Anyway, the slaying of the dragon, it wasn't a dragon that was being slain. It was actually the Pope. And all the black spew that was coming out, supposed to be the blood of the dragon. It was the Catholic doctrine.
Christ, yeah. You mentioned earlier on that your own ancestors were from Italy.
Yes.
And there was a great connection between Liverpool and the Italians in the Scotland Road area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, don't forget that the Irish had actually settled now in Scotland Road, and there was churches built, you know, there was lots of churches built for the Catholic brethren. And when the Irish, when the Italians started to come over, they started to settle right alongside the Irish brethren themselves. So they started to settle there, and that became known as Little Italy. It became known as Little Italy because what the Italians wanted to do, they wanted to get to a place in Liverpool where they could just embark, you know, near the port, but they also wanted the church, and they also wanted to mix with people of their own faith. So hence, they lived alongside the Irish. And don't forget that even the Irish, you know, we wanted to go to America, there was 6-month waiting list. Believe it or not, there was 6-month waiting list to get to America, you know, and these certain cheap passages, cheap passage, and there was 6-month waiting list, and so lots of Irish stayed hoping for a ship in 6 months' time, but in the meantime, they got jobs and they got places where to live as well. So they decided to stay, just like the Italians.
Yeah.
There was lots of, shall I say, terrazzo floor layers, you know, laying the mosaic. There was lots of those lads, and also musicians. And my family themselves, they came over, and they were split. Half of the family went to America. Yet, like my side of the family, you know, from my mother's side, they were left behind. They weren't stranded or anything. They just had to wait 6 months to get a passage over to New York to get to Ellis Island. Anyway, what had happened with my side of the family, they got work, and they decided to stay because they said, well, it's better than where we are or where we just come from, because they came from southern Italy, you know, around the Naples area, where it was drought after drought, year after year, and it was shocking, you know. Anyway, after the First World War, again, there was no money, because all the money that Italy had, you know, they said to the Allies, listen, you know, you'll have to help us out. We can't afford a war. This is in the First World War. So they said, we'll compensate you. So they never got compensated. And so lots of Italians, including my family, decided, oh, well, okay, we'll just go over to America. But they stayed here. They got work. As I said, they said, well, it's better here than in Italy, you know, starving and everything else over there. We can't grow anything. So that was it. That was it. It's funny, you know, because, not funny, it's strange, because my mum and my aunties and my uncles, they used to have processions, you know, in the 30s. And it was for raising money for Il Duce. It was Mussolini. And they raised money, you know, by having these processions. Also, the Irish used to join in as well, because there was a procession with music and stuff. They were raising money. It was a strange concoction. It must have been wonderful, because there was great cuisine there, great colour, great music, great everything. And but they didn't realise that they were raising money for the fascist party led by Mussolini, Il Duce. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. And I always remember my mum and Auntie Mary and my Auntie Leah, they were saying, oh yeah, you know, we were all dressed in black, you know, marching around. They were children, you know, they were children. And that's how they marched around. But it had nothing to do with Mosley or anything. This is in the early 30s, and, you know, raising money for, you know, back home, the Italians back home, because they were still living in, but they were still impoverished, unfortunately.
One of the challenges kind of facing the Irish people when they came over as well was how hard it was to get work.
Brilliant. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll give you an example. I can't even pronounce this word, and a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who's ill at the moment, unfortunately, John Kelly. Now, Kelly is a good Irish name, and the Gaelic name, I don't think he could even pronounce it. And there was an O, but the anglicised it. And once that was anglicised, it came out, they dropped the O as well, so it just came out as Kelly. And lots of other names as well was anglicised, so that they could get work. That's all. Like the Italians, for example, they had to anglicise their names. Even the Jews had to anglicise their names as well. And they came over. So, you know, it's that sort of scenario. You'd either starve or work and drop your name, drop your original name. And that name is shocking, to people today who are doing the genealogy. Absolutely shocking. They find out, well, that's our name there. Why haven't we had that? And they should know the history. And they go back and find out why their name had changed. And it was just to get work, to survive. It was a survival thing.
Yeah, you'd often hear of the signs like "No Irish Need Apply." There's been songs about that, and "No blacks, no dogs, no Irish." So it was a challenging environment, very much, I'd imagine, for those people when they first came over to Liverpool.
Absolutely. There was a fellow by the name of Dandy Pat. He was here, an Irishman, and he helped all the Irish as he could. He got them work, he got them places to live. He owns a pub, and that was in Scotland Road. And he owns a pub, and he built a monument to him, Dandy Pat, his name was. Well, they called him Dandy Pat. And he used to help out the unfortunates. He used to give them money. He helped families out. And he was just a great man, to not just to the Irish, by the way, to the Italians who also was living alongside the Irish. So, he did help the unfortunates out. He was a philanthropist, actually. He was a philanthropist. As I said, he got them work. He got them a roof over their heads. And he really helped them out.
It's just the stereotypes there we mentioned a while ago that you read out from the newspaper. It's actually ironic that the way that Irish people were viewed in Liverpool at that time are similar to how Liverpool people now can be viewed by some sections of the UK right now. It's come from the anti-Celtic stereotype. So it's like Liverpool has become identified as an Irish city, in a lot of respects a Celtic city, maybe, with Wales and Scotland tied into it. And just, like the stereotypes, especially at the south of England, like to portray like the bin dippers and lazy and on the dole and up to no good, generally criminals, is like the petty crime is kind of the image they like to portray of Scousers and Liverpool people. And it's just ironic that I've always said that having Irish connections didn't do Liverpool any harm or any favour, in the 1980s under Thatcher. Liverpool was seen as having sympathies towards the Irish struggle and that in Northern Ireland. And it definitely didn't help, I would say.
No, it didn't help. You're so right, because what you have, you mentioned Thatcher on the 80s and the government, and they wanted a managed decline of Liverpool. They wanted to see a city decline. They wanted to see the city, but they didn't know about the strength of the Liverpool people.
Yeah.
And the Liverpool people fought back. And that's why you have a very strong vibrancy of the city. And you get banners up in Liverpool, at the football club, that is, on a match day, and it says Scouse, not English, because it's the way, as you mentioned there quite rightly, our portrayed by being thieves and idleness on behalf of every Scouser. I went away to Italy just before COVID, because I only go to Italy. Anyway, I was sitting there and he was outside just having something to eat, and I was having a beer, and there was a couple, just this couple, that was all that was there, just me, and a couple who was on a table. And I just, looked over, he smiled over at me. I was speaking Italian to the waiter, you see. I was just having a conversation with him. He thought I was Italian. And anyway, the lads went away, the waiter, he was called. And I looked over and he was smiling at me. I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "London." And I went, oh, I said, that's nice. The first words, the lady said that, the woman, Landon. And the first words out of the man, her husband, or whoever he was, said, what's your handbag? What's your handbag, Carol? Say her name was Carol. What's your handbag, Carol? He's a Scouser. And I said nothing to him. I just looked at the woman and I said, do you think that me, here, sitting here, is going to get up, walk over to you, snatch your handbag and run off? And she said, no. I said, well, tell your husband that.
Yeah.
Tell your husband that, or whoever he is, you will. And I just said, I'm going to be sitting there anyway. Yeah, so that we get that every time. And it's not nice.
No, it's obnoxious. Nice.
It is. It's not. But that's the way it is. And as I said, you go to a Liverpool game and what you see is a big banner, Scouts not English.
That's why I was asking earlier on there, like, are a lot of people in Liverpool not supporting the English team in the Euros, would you say? That's
right, absolutely. It's I'll tell you who they support, I'm being honest. Just imagine, if the Republic was there, the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
If they were in the Euros, that's who the people here would be supporting. With the exception of all support the Azari, the Italians. But that they would, the majority, 99.9% of them would be supporting the likes of the Republic. And it's a good point you made there before as well about Celtic, the Celtic thing, like Scotland and Ireland and even Wales, because we don't really look in to England. We don't look in. We actually look outwards.
Yeah, to America and Ireland.
Yeah, Ireland and America. We actually look out to them.
So I'm just going to cover a couple of things here that the Irish influenced Liverpool, and I think the accent in particular, the Scouse accent is very much influenced by Ireland, I would say, because apparently before the Irish come over, the Liverpool accent was quite similar to the rest of Lancashire, but the Liverpool twang that's now, which is one of my favourite accents, and it's very musical. The musical twang to the Liverpool accent, I would say, is definitely an inspiration of the Irish accent.
Well, funny enough, yeah, you're right, because our accent, I'll tell you, Pedro, that Liverpool people, the city is a very warm city. It's the people I'm talking about. It's a very warm city. It's also a very generous city because we look after our own. We band together. We actually band together. We look after. I was having problems only today over my electricity, and I put it up on social network. And some of the messages I received, the comments was absolutely, they were truly breathtaking, and it shows you the love, dare I say, of the Liverpool people that they have for each other. And that comes from, believe it or not, it comes from two sets of people. And I'll tell you who they are. The generosity and the warmth. It's the Irish themselves and the Italians. It's inbred in us, you see.
Would you include the Welsh in that?
Well, I only say that, I'm being honest, I don't know whether it's being biased or what. If you talk about the accent, yeah, you could talk about that, yeah, you could include the Welsh in that particular thing, because we say a few words, like Welsh words, what they come out, like mam, for example, mam. We call our mothers mam, if you like. The English call them mum, and the Americans call them mom. So yeah, mam comes from the Welsh, and the Irish, mammy, if you like.
Yeah.
So, but you know where the nasal comes from? I'm going to surprise you there. Where the nasal, you speak with a nasally accent. And even Lennon sang about it. And it comes from, believe it or not, the Norwegian community.
Yeah.
Because they speak with a nasal, you know.
Yeah. Lobscouse for Scousers.
Lobscouse, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Lobscouse, yeah.
The very first time I was in Liverpool, we went in, myself and my cousin went into a restaurant and we ordered a bowl of scouse or a pan of scouse, and we were all excited, like, you know, we're going to have scouse now, like, you know, and just pulls it out, like, this is Irish stew, you know, so just kind of like we kind of got a bit of a lend.
Yeah.
So, but
no, that's right, because people do say, is it an Irish stew? Well, it does come from lobscouse, and it's spelled Lobskause, and it's a Norwegian word, and it came from. I'd have to go back to 1774 when a lad by the name of Brocklebank, Daniel Brocklebank, came over from America, and he wanted to set up a whaling business. He couldn't go to Canada because they would just threw him out. Canadians, because they've got whaling businesses, you see. So he came over to Liverpool because he found out about Norwegians, and he set up his whaling business here in 1776, believe it or not. The year of the American War of Independence, which was a crazy year, to be honest. Anyway, he came here, set up his business, and he asked Liverpool lads, you know, if they wanted to go whaling. They didn't. They thought like going over to Wales or something. He said, yeah, we'll go over there. No, it's in the Arctic, you know. Anyway, he said, no, it's too cold, that mate, we're not going. Anyway, he sent for these Norwegians, and the Norwegians were whalers. So anyway, a few Liverpool lads, you know, joined the crew, and what they did, they had this lobscouse, which was warm, which was hot, and it was beefy, and it was, you know, nourishment. And the Liverpool lads, you know, look at this is fantastic. So they started eating this lobscouse. And after a while, you know, the lob got dropped, and then the Scousers were going whaling, if you like, without the Norwegians. So they still made the lobscouse, but the lob was dropped. And then Scouse, instead of being called, you know, SKAUSE, it became SCOUSE, Scouse. And that's how we got our name around the world, because, you know, sailors from different ports meeting people from all over. Say like you're in Melbourne, for example. You know, where are you from? Oh, from Liverpool. A Scouser, you know, because they got to know about the
Irish stew.
The Irish stew, yeah, you could say that.
But like, another influence in the language of the Irish people would, you know, or Liverpool people would say, me bag, me ma, me da.
Yeah.
That would be an Irish thing, I would say, you know, me.
Yeah, that's right. Me, that's right. Me ma, me da, yeah.
The influence of Liverpool, the influence of Ireland can also be seen in a few of the place names or street names in Liverpool. So there's a few of these here. In Old Swan, there's Ulster Road, Ulster Road, Belfast Road, Killarney Road, Bray Road, Donegal Road. And the district where Liverpool Football Club are based, or beloved Liverpool Football Club, Anfield, currently is based from a townland in County Wexford called Anfield with an E in New Ross.
Yeah, that's right.
From a former city mayor, Robert Graves, who was a wealthy shipping magnate. He brought land in the area and called it Anfield Farm after his childhood home. And as the years went on, they dropped the E, just like Lobscouse, or dropped part of the name and just Anfield. So ANFIELD. So it's a great connection there with the stadium.
Well, that's it, Anfields, yeah, which is fantastic, actually. And as you know, you mentioned the fields of Athlone Way, absolutely brilliant. And you've got when the copper in full voice singing that, absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You know, the Irish links with Liverpool is unbelievable and very strong, because when I was a lecturer, retired now, when I was a lecturer, I used to say, but I'm going back a few years now, by the way, 80% of the blood of Liverpool people is Irish.
Yeah, that's a fairly high percentage, you know, so.
Yeah, very much so, very much so, very much so. So the Irish influence in this city is humongous, I would say, absolutely.
Sure, even the Christ the King Metropolitan Cathedral, Paddy's Wigwam, as it's affectionately known as.
There you go.
The Catholic.
And people think that people think it's a derogatory word, and it's not.
Yeah, no, like I suppose it was built for the Catholic community in Liverpool, which a lot were Liverpool and Italian. So it's great having two cathedrals so near to each other. It's unique, I would say, as well, the two cathedrals so near to each other in Liverpool.
And yet, the both of them, if they would have been built in the proper sites, they wouldn't have been nowhere near each other. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, because they had different sites earmarked. And the Catholic one, believe it or not, was in down by St. Domingo Vale, which is very near Anfield, you know, the stadium, the Liverpool Stadium. You could have seen both grounds, actually, Goodison and Anfield, where this cathedral should have been built. And he said, no, you can't build there for the reasons. So anyway, it was on a site of Our Lady Immaculate, the church of Our Lady Immaculate Conception. And that's where it was supposed to be built. Anyway, they decided, well, okay, we'll have to go somewhere else. And they went to another Catholic area, which was known, St. Andrew's Gardens, but it was known as the Bull Ring. You know, so anyway, it's built there. And then the Anglican Cathedral was where the Mersey Tunnel is today, at the bottom of Dale Street. And they said, no, you can't build it there. The Mersey Tunnel wasn't there, obviously. And they said, no, you can't build it there because look at St. George's Hall, look at, you know, all the neoclassical buildings around. He said, oh, just look out of place. This big Gothic thing. Gothic wouldn't go with neoclassical stuff. So they said, okay, so they built it up there on St. James's Mount, which is the corner of Oak Street and where Paddy's Wigwam, I think it's a lovely terminology. Yeah. Paddy's Wigwam, because all the Irish worked on it. You know, it's at the other corner of Oak Street, both of them. You know.
I love it when at Anfield when they show a photograph of behind the Anfield Road end on TV at a match, and you can see the city centre from Liverpool spread out like across the skyline, and you can see Paddy's Wigwam in the shot.
Yeah,
it's just great, and just the Irish Sea as well. It's beautiful, like, you know.
It's I'll tell you, there was a fellow by the name of Nehemiah, and he was a Brazilian architect.
He doesn't play for PSG, does he?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this Nehemiah, he built a cathedral, a round cathedral in Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. And Sir Gibbard, Sir George Gibbard, he said, okay, he said, I'm going to build very similar to that. And that's Oscar Niemeyer, his name was, the architect of Brazil as well. And this Gibbard fella, he said, I'm going to build it differently. He said, I'm going to build it like it, rather different from the big Anglican one. So we've got the modern, beautiful Catholic cathedral, two great cathedrals, by the way, and a World Heritage Site.
Not too many people know this, but the famous writer and playwright Brendan Behan spent a brief bit of time in Liverpool.
Yeah.
As a 16-year-old, and he was sent over by the youth wing of the IRA to blow up Liverpool docks. And it was in his book Borstal Boy, he kind of covers this period of his life, and he ended up being incarcerated in Borstal for having the dynamite on him. And he obviously, luckily, he didn't get round to doing it, but it was on his to-do list anyway. But in the book, it's very good how he explains how staying in a lodging house in Everton, which is like an orange district.
That's right.
And he described how the policeman knocked on his door or broke into the lodging house, and he could tell by them that they weren't calling around to inquire about his health. So they broke into his room and they said, "Have you got a gun, Paddy?" And he said, "If I had a gun, you wouldn't have come in that door to shagging easy." So it always makes me laugh. So he got taken in for questioning, and he was getting the usual anti-Irish stuff like, "You Irish swine, you sloppy Irish Mick." And he says to him, "I'm not sure if that sort of abuse is provided for under regulations, but what I do know that is provided for is you need to feed me. So you want to give me food, or can I order in from outside or something, like, just to wind him up." But yeah, it
was great, Brendan Behan. He was, as you mentioned there, Borstal Boy, that's his most famous novel.
Yeah.
Novel, so we say.
Yeah.
He died at a very short, young age. Very young age, he died. He died in the 60s, didn't it? Was it 64 or something like that he died?
He was quite young when he died. He had a book of one-liners. I think one of my favorite ones was when he said, "I was court-martialed in my absence. I was sentenced to death in my absence. So I told them they could shoot me in my absence as well." Everyone. But he kind of became very empathetic towards the average English person after his time in Barcelona, and it was kind of the empire he had the issue with, not the average British person, so it's quite an interesting read if no one's read it. I saw one of your videos there, Frank, on your YouTube channel about the saint of the slums, Katie Wilkinson, as an example of an Irish person who contributed to Liverpool society. Got to maybe just tell the viewers a bit about her.
Absolutely, she was a great, shall we say, she was a great philanthropist, one of the greatest 19th century women of all time, anywhere in the world. What she did, she came over from Enniskillen, and unfortunately, they were on the way to America, not to Liverpool, to get a ship, and you're talking 1794. And she was coming over with her parents, a little baby brother, who was a baby, another young brother. So he was trailing, and they were on the way to America. Unfortunately, the ship landed, and the baby and the father drowned, and young Kitty, he was 9 years of age, was saved along with his brother and the mother, and they were brought ashore in Liverpool. The unfortunate thing was, when they looked at the two young kids, they were more or less, they were incarcerated in Lancaster Workhouse in Cotton, and she had to work there until she was 21. And she worked there. The mother was institutionalized in Liverpool. So she got back to Liverpool from Lancaster. And she looked for her mother. She found her mother. And Kitty held 3 jobs. And she was looking at the uneducated kids, street urchins. She opened a school, which she did. And she was charging, but the children were being educated. She was a very, very clever young woman, very clever, was Kitty Wilkinson. And the children got afraid of the mother because she used to bring the mother in and just sit her there. And you know, if you're a little child and you're seeing this lady acting peculiar or just sitting there staring, you'll be frightened of her. So unfortunately, the parents pulled the children out, so the school went. And then she went and worked in a nail factory. If you could imagine, hot nails, and she had to carry these nails. And if you could imagine, there was no like heat-proof gloves then as they have today. Her hands were, you could imagine being badly scarred. She met a fellow by the name of Jean Dumont, a Frenchman, but he was a prisoner, a Napoleonic prisoner of war, and she married him, and she had 2 children to him, but unfortunately he drowned. She had this. As I said, she was a wonderful lady, and she worked very hard, and she had this house. And she used to bring in waifs and strays, and she had families out. And then people were walking around and they couldn't wash and anything. It was shocking. Couldn't wash. So what she used to do, she opened a wash house, the first wash house in the world, so she could wash people's clothes and things like that. She was very hygienic, was Kitty Wilkinson. And unfortunately, the working classes couldn't afford to pay, to get anything washed. So what she did, she charged more for the people who could afford it, the middle classes or whatever, so that she could do the working classes washing. So she did that.
Very good.
In the very first wash house that was ever opened in the world. She married by this time, she married a gardener named Tom Wilkinson, and her name became Kitty Wilkinson, because you've got these people who hardly recognise such a wonderful lady as that young Irish girl. Who gave so much. And in the Anglican Cathedral, there's a noble women's window, and you've got all the fantastic, great women, and Kitty is proudly sitting there. She died in 1860. Such a lovely to Liverpool. Great philanthropist. That was an Irish girl.
So Agnes Jones was another great Irish person.
Yeah. Unbelievable lady. And she's also in the Noble Window as well, Agnes Jones. And she came in 1860. She was seconded from Cambridge to look after the needy here by William Rathbone. So he paid her. He said, I'll pay her to look after her. So she went into the diseased areas of Liverpool because people were suffering from cholera, typhoid, dysentery. And she was a nurse, and she looked after them. She was a very pretty lady as well. She was so hard working, and unfortunately, she caught cholera and died 4 years after coming into Liverpool. She died, and she's buried in Ireland. Actually, her body was sent over to Ireland, and she's buried over there somewhere. But her name lives long well here in Liverpool, Agnes Jones.
Michael James Whitty is another kind of pioneer.
Do you know what he was? He was a chief constable, right? And he gave it up, and he became the editor, the chief editor of the Liverpool Echo, Michael James Whitty.
He was involved.
Man.
He was involved in forming the police force, wasn't he, and the fire brigade in Liverpool.
That's right, absolutely, and that's what I said. He was like chief constable, and the fire brigade, and the fire brigade. He was a good man, and it's very unusual for Michael Whitty, and I'll tell you for why. He was a Protestant. I mean, he was a Catholic in a Protestant city, and there was lots of oohs and ahs and everything else when, he formed this wonderful police force of ours. Anyway, he stepped down, and as I said, he became editor of what we know today as the Liverpool Echo. He was involved in a riot, actually, in 1850, 51, when it wasn't a riot. You've got to excuse that. It wasn't a riot as such, because what had happened, there was a church called Holy Cross. And why it's called Holy Cross? St. Patrick actually stood on the site of this particular church, Holy Cross, because he held the staff of the cross as he was going over to Ireland, this St. Patrick, as we know. And he built this church anyway in honor of them. And the next was this church and all the Irish and a bishop. I forget the bishop's name, unfortunately. Forget the bishop's name. And he came. I don't know whether it was a bishop or a cardinal, but he came and visited the Holy Cross Church. And thousands all packed in, and they were on where the organ was, on this mezzanine. And these thousands, and unfortunately the mezzanine collapsed, and people were struggling, injured and terrible, and people were coming out bloodied, and the police thought that it was a riot, and they started going in. The police themselves were batons because they thought that they were rioting, and yet they were running around trying to get the injured out. And he stopped it, Michael J. Whitty.
There's a statue of a Scouser on O'Connell Street in Dublin of James Larkin. So he was one of the key leaders of the 1913 lockout in Dublin.
That's good. That's right.
Had a big role in the labour movement in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a museum in Boston of James Larkin. It's, see, as you said about the connection between Ireland and Liverpool, there's no other city on the planet that has more connection with Liverpool. Because don't forget, Liverpool was known as the capital of Ireland, the second Dublin. We were known as them. All the music started here as well, with the Irish and the sea shanties. Absolutely amazing, the sea shanties. I was given a lecture to 500 people, and I came on. Anyway, came on the stage, and I said, "Good evening, ladies and gents." And he said, "Oh, good evening." And people all made a big round of applause for Frank. And I said, "I'm not going to give you the lecture today about the history. So I'm not going to do all that." I said, "What I am going to do, I'm going to sing you for the next 2 hours a lot of Irish sea shanties." We were all sitting there like, I said, "So there's one sea shanty that's 40 verses long." I said, but I'll sing you the verse, and I want you all to join in. You know, after about 10 minutes, I'll give you the cue to join in. And they were all like,
Whoa, like,
I said, I'm only joking. I said, I'm only joking. You're cheered. I thought Frank was going to sing them a couple of sea shanties for a couple of hours.
That's actually a song. Sea Shanty's a song the Pogues have, actually. I'd be a big fan of the Pogues, Shane McGowan, you know, so that's good. Liverpool as well was the only city that had an Irish nationalist MP at Westminster. T.P. O'Connor.
T.P. O'Connor, another, well, I know he's got definitely a museum after him over in Boston. Yeah, you're right. You're right. T.P. O'Connor, absolutely brilliant. First Catholic, to be honest. First Catholic as well in the city.
As the generations went on, then I suppose the Beatles all had Irish ancestry. Like you mentioned, the music side of things, you know.
Yeah.
Cilla Black as well had a bit of Irish in her.
Oh yeah, yeah. Scotland Road, there you go. You know, she was born and bred in Scotland Road. Yeah. Cilla White, her name was, it's incredible the amount of people that has Irish blood and footballers, you name it, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. One of Liverpool's greatest managers, Joe Fagan, manager for a season, and he won a treble, an unprecedented treble in his first season, Joe Fagan, when he took over Bob Paisley. And, you know, so Fagan, Irish ancestry, obviously.
The sense of humour as well, I think this Liverpool people and Irish people have quite similar sense of humour. Like, you know, we gel very well. It's a city I love visiting, you know, it's kind of quick wit, kind of dry wit, gallows humour, one might say, at times, like, you know. And it's you can see the influence in that and sense of humour and the accent and a bond that has been forged and will last a long time. You know, it's a hugely supported city in Ireland, Liverpool, and even for go over for weekends away and stuff like that. That personally, I much prefer to go to Liverpool than London any day of the week in terms of hospitality, in terms of being friendly. There's no chalk and cheese going to Liverpool or London, in my experience anyway, you know.
Yeah, I think it's in a lot of people's experience as well. When I was a kid growing up, we used to go to a certain shop because it was near to it on Scotland Road. Excuse me. And do you know what the shop was named? The 98 shop.
After 1798, is it?
Yeah, there you go. The 98 shop. And the owner, well, it was passed down through generations. And we used to go in, and these kids going to school and coming home from school. This gentleman always used to just appear. We used to say, "Can we have 4 walkers, please, Dermot?" His name was Dermot, you know. And you just wonder, you know, I wonder, I've been through the years, whatever happened to Dermot, you know. I wonder whatever happened to him. Because you just like, you lose time, don't you? And you just move on. And you just wonder. The 98,
the 1798 rebellion. The 1798 rebellion was largely fought in.
That's right.
It was largely fought in Wexford, and we mentioned Robert Graves a while ago there being originally from Anfield in New Ross. So that could have been a Wexford connection there, the 98 shop, potentially.
Well, it is obviously because it was named after the rebellion. Yeah. It was named after the rebellion, the 98 shop. And how Irish can you get with James, you know?
Yeah,
a man's named James in the 98. But is that the tricolour as well, you know? The Irish tricolour. Is that, you know, over the door?
The tricolour, is it?
Yeah, the tricolour, yeah.
It was the Irish Centre was a great way of developing keeping the Irish people together?
The Irish Centre, you see, it was actually built in 1816, and it was named the Wellington Rooms after the Duke of Wellington's victory over Napoleon at Waterloo. So it was built a year later. So by the time we get now, it was just going and ongoing and ongoing. And by the time we came into the 20th century, the Irish lads had taken over. And every 17th of March, they had the procession, all the Irish lads, you know, and girls, you can imagine them all meeting there. And this is in the heart of the city. This is by the Catholic Cathedral. And they just went on the little procession celebrating St. Patrick's Day, as you do everywhere. And it was magnificent. And I've graduated on no less than 4 occasions in my time. And I always used to go into the Irish Centre after the celebration of the graduation to celebrate. And I could tell you how the ceiling was, because the ceiling was magnificent. Because by the end of the night, the celebration, I was just flat on my back, looking at the ceiling. You know, so it was. I've got great memories, fond memories of the Irish Centre. I remember going back a few years ago as well to a reunion where I was brought up, and it was all the old neighbours, you know, from where I grew up in Jerry Gardens and Jerry Crescent, and all the old neighbours, every one of them, hundreds of them. And they had the reunion in the Irish Centre, and it was such a wonderful evening, such a wonderful evening. You know, to see all the old faces and things like that.
Liverpool Irish Centre is in Boundary Lane now at the moment.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be worth checking out for anyone listening in who wants to meet Irish people in Liverpool as a base. But you mentioned being on your back inside the Irish Centre, that Liverpool people and Irish, again, do enjoy a drink, like, and having a bit of banter and a laugh, like, you know, and
of course,
very much in common.
Of course. Well, yesterday, getting a cab from, I had to do something. I didn't know whether to do my show or what. I was like this last night, and I jumped in the cab, and we seen 2 Irish bars next to one another, and all the people, it was a beautiful sunny day, and all the people were sitting outside, and there's all the Irish music going on, and the people just sitting there talking and enjoying themselves, and it was fantastic. And I said to my mate, I said, do you know what, I just feel like getting out here and just joining them over there and listening, you know, the Irish bar. I had 2 Irish bars next to one another, absolutely brilliant. And this is what it's all about. Everybody goes to the Irish theme bars, which is brilliant Gaelic music, you name it, fantastic.
So I hope you've enjoyed our chat here today, guys. We've covered a wide range of topics there on Liverpool Irish connection. I probably haven't even scratched the surface, but we've done quite a bit anyway there. I hope you found the stories entertaining. Frank has his own show live on Facebook on Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Unless the Azzurri are playing, then he'll be taking a break from that. So we'll put the Facebook link for that in the video description as well. So Frank, thanks very much for coming on this evening. It's been a pleasure discussing with you.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. It's been really wonderful. It's past an hour or 2 away, and thanks very much for having me on, Padre. Thank you.
Well, I don't think it'll be the last time we'll be on either of our shows there. So I look forward to coming on yours again, and vice versa. You might come by for more tea and biscuits sometime.
Absolutely.
Hopefully in person next time, to be great when we can finally get over again. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notifications bell, everyone, and we'll see you next time on the Parlay with Padre podcast. Good night. God bless.